Hello and welcome to Let's H. This week we've got another review of American Horror Story, Hotel. But first I'd like to tell you, please check the links in the blurb. Follow me on social media, check out my comics, and consider becoming a patron on Patreon if you like what I do. I need the support, and I'd love it if you spread the word and get other people listening, following, and watching. Thanks very much. Well, this week on American Horror Story, Hotel, we had Devil's Night. Some of the problems with the previous episodes were that they had too much going on. They followed too many characters at once, and as a result, you didn't really spend too much time with any of the characters, and what little you had with them wasn't very good. This week, at the very least, it concentrated on Camp Gay Detective and his wife, which was a good thing. Even though they're kind of boring, unlikable characters, the things going on around them were way more interesting, and it really helped to have a focus instead of just jumping constantly around with different characters who are, as usual, different characters than they were in the last episode. One thing I should probably get out of the way here is the fact that I have a tremendous amount of trouble anytime it's done where you kind of fictionalize real-life serial killers. To me, it feels like it's turning them into movie monsters or movie villains, and I find that troubling because I feel like it's insulting not only to their victims by, in a way, trivializing or making artificial, almost plasticky, their suffering and deaths, but also basically tends to bowdlerize the killers as characters. The thing is, we've seen serial killers, even the psychological, realistic serial killer, done particularly well in a number of cases. Psycho, Silence of the Lambs. A lot of these fictional films and fictional characters were handled with tremendous aplomb and tremendous talent. There's no reason why they should have felt it necessary to use real-life serial killers, and I found it kind of distasteful. That said, the depictions were actually pretty strong, especially from series regular Lily Rabe, who unfortunately is kind of wasted on the character of Eileen Wuornos. It disappointed me that, with all likelihood, she won't be back to the series, since she did such a solid job before, even if I didn't particularly like her characters. We found out more about the maid this week, which was also kind of interesting, but I seriously think that they should have just started the series in the 1970s to minimize the sheer amount of flashbacks that this series has. Every damn episode has some lengthy-ass flashback. Most of the rest of it, though, is just the asshole mother dealing with her undead son and Camp Gay Detective at his Devil's Night dinner. The whole thing with the kid and the dog and everything, that was stupid. It was dumb, it was predictable, it didn't need to happen, and it was kind of offensive the way it did. It wasn't particularly skillful, it wasn't particularly surprising, it was just overall disappointing and tacky. But American Horror Story is unfortunately very good at being tacky whenever it possibly can be. It will always take the tacky option. There is no class here, and that much was obvious from the first episode. It's unfortunate, but it's not a classy or refined show. It's not sophisticated in any way. And that is perhaps why it can be forgiven that they even do the whole serial killer thing. It's not classy, it's not sophisticated, but it is very much something that they would do, especially in this series where, even more than most of the previous series, they seem intent, hell-bent in fact, on tying in to real-world figures. In this case, though, it's even more regrettable because it seems to imply that these serial killers were inspired by Evan Peters' character, which, okay, I'll give you that, but the character was important enough by being the person who made the hotel in the first place, and his character was inspired by a real-life serial killer, but is a fictional character. Why then would you need to bring in real-life serial killers for him to inspire? That doesn't make any sense. Another thing that kind of concerns me, and it ties back into the reasons why I don't really like involving real-life serial killers, is that it also cheapens the people themselves. Like, a lot of these people had serious problems, serious mental issues and emotional issues. To basically make them into movie monsters, essentially, takes away all of that. And that concerns me. I don't think that's quite right. And I think in many ways that also, again, ties back to a lack of respect for the victims and the people who were affected and their lives affected by horrible tragedy. Ultimately, as usual, we don't care about Camp Gay Detective or his wife. I did, however, echo her sentiment when she aimed a gun at Gaga and said, "I'm sick of your bullshit." I'd love to have an animated gif of that just to play over and over for myself with her saying, "I'm sick of your bullshit." I don't know why she really ended up relenting, though, because, well, it didn't really make much sense. Tristan did get the sole funny line of the episode where he misunderstood that Gaga was fucking the wife, which was actually kind of amusing. But I don't want to be saddled with her ass for eternity. Who would want to be saddled with her ass for eternity? To boot, the whole explanation about, "Oh, I was just preventing neglect for these children." Well, we know that's not true, and that's one of the things that annoys me, because it's already established that that's absolutely not true. We have seen Gal Gadot and her boy toy drinking from these kids. They're basically little blood fountains, and that's all. That's one of the things I took great exception to, because it mirrored my own comic from 5 years ago so closely. So that kind of also cheesed me, because there was no real attempt to justify that or to make that believable. At this point, of course we don't believe that, because we know better. But again, it's American Horror Story's tendency to write characters as different people in different episodes and expect us to just go with it. Sorry, but I'm not going to do that. Overall, I have to say, though, although it wasn't as refreshing as last week's, which was genuinely head and shoulders better than episodes 1 and 2, Episode 4 was okay for American Horror Story, and specifically for Hotel. It doesn't really compare favorably to previous series, especially Murder House, which I've watched most recently, but it's okay. It's worth watching, I guess. It wasn't absolutely awful. Lily Rabe's character and acting was very good, even though I didn't really like the casting, since it means that she's one episode and probably never again. I also have to say that the sound was good this episode. It was odd to hear Natalie Merchant's Carnival, which was a song I remember when it came out and was very big, and I still like it to this day. It's one of her only solo songs that I really still listen to. But we didn't really get to hear much of the singing. It was just mainly the instrumentation, which was of course very good. But it was an odd choice for the character, for the scene, and for everything else. It didn't really seem appropriate, but at least it wasn't as ridiculous as Hotel California or embarrassing as Don't Stop the Dance. You know, call me Queenie, not the Queenie from Coven, but you know what I mean. Fiona Good could make drinking a martini into a powerful, assertive gesture. They literally could not have made Camp Gay Detective look more fey if he were sucking cocks while he drank all those martinis. Could we not have had him order like a scotch and water or a bourbon or something in a tumbler or a short glass or something? Instead, we have him hefting up these ridiculous giant martini glasses. Like, seriously, that's one step away from an appletini and bar cocksucking. Do it better next time, Hotel. Do it better. The thing is, I don't really have much new to say this week that I haven't either already said or that isn't totally and fully apparent from watching the episode and just doing that. There's not a lot of new stuff. It's still inconsistent, it's still tacky, it's still not super good, but at least it's not as bad as the first 2 episodes, and it gives you some hope that things will actually improve, even if they're not really improving at any appreciable rate. We're about a third of the way through the series, and so far, it averages out to it's okay for what it is, which isn't really a glowing recommendation. It's not a good series, even for American Horror Story, but it's okay. It's watchable if there's absolutely nothing else on, but it's not going to win any awards, or at least I hope not, because it's just not even exceptional for this series. I will say that the one dude that interacted with Hypodermic Sally and basically got served up as an evening sacrifice was far and away the most compelling actor in the entire thing, beside Lily. He stole the scenes that he was in. He made the character seem more leveled and nuanced, like he had more complexity to him. But unfortunately now I'm pretty sure we'll never find out anything about him. The whole thing about the ghosts hiding everything, or did they? Especially when living people or even semi-living people are involved, it seems problematic. Like, I remember some things happening in Murder House with kind of a clumsy attempt at not really explaining it very well, but it just felt to me like a cheap makes-it-easy moment. I wasn't really that convinced in the first place that any of this really needed to happen or any of this stuff really needed to be said, so as a result the whole thing ended up being kind of hollow. It was like someone tried to tell a clever story and then went, "Ha! And there it was!" And you're just sitting there thinking, yeah, but that wasn't really a twist or poignant or anything. It was just kind of stupid. I mean, you could tell that they were kind of self-congratulatory and thought that they were being very, very terribly clever, but in reality they weren't. In reality it wasn't clever at all, and that's American Horror Story Hotel in one for you. This week we have a different artist doing the background painting. This week we have Will Scathelock. I've got links in the description, so please check his stuff out. He's awesome. He's one of my oldest friends, and he's a fantastic artist. Check him out. Hit him up for art. Talk to him. Support him. He's great. He's wonderful and personable, and you will love talking to him. Please check out my stuff as well. We've got links in the blurb, just like before. And I will see you next time, probably next week, for another episode of Let's H. Also, check out our Halloween special, in which a Coven review, American Horror Story Coven, from December 2014, I finally edited and did post-production. The sound is not quite as good, but I did everything possible. It also has a very amusing quote in it that seems almost prophetic as I ended up watching Hotel. So I'll see you all then. Take care. Thanks for listening. Bye.